out, you know.
Well, the next player I'd like to ask you about is Gary Moore. How did you come to be with Gary Moore?
Gary Moore was also on Jet Records,
Okay.
and I'd seen Gary several times around doing gigs either with him or on the same bill, that sort of thing. And it was actually Sharon Osbourne that mentioned to Gary when he needed a bass player to do a session on some tracks on the album at the time was Victims of the Future, and Sharon suggested me to do some tracks, so I went in and he was really pleased. And then not long after that he had a live video to do of a gig in Ireland. Actually, I think it was a gig in Dublin and a gig in Belfast, and they were going to use the best of the two shows for his live video release, and he asked me to do that then. And I remember he was very pleased at the end of it. At the end of the second show, we were all having a drink, and you know, it was over. And because I'd only had, I think, something like 5 days to learn 14 songs, rehearse them and get them right, and then be filmed doing them. So there was no room for, you know, for fuck-ups or whatever. But he was very pleased, and he came in and said to me, look, he said, if you're ever interested in having a gig, there's one here for you. So when Ozzy and I fell out the next year in '85, Ozzy and I had a bit of a fallout. And Gary, at the time, I phoned Neil Carter, who was the keyboard player, other guitarist in the band with Gary. And he said, oh, Gary's just got Glenn Hughes in the band from Deep Purple. And I thought, that's not going to work out. I knew it would, though, there would be a clash there. I said, well, okay, give me a call in about a month or so when it doesn't work out. And sure enough, I got the call. It didn't work out, and then I went to work with Gary.
Mm. What were your observations about him as a player?
Gary?
Yeah.
Oh, he's brilliant.
Mm.
Great player. I love Gary's playing. He's and he's a funny bloke too.
Is
He and I just hit it off really well. You know, we'd be in hysterics laughing sometimes. He's got a great sense of humour. He's very witty. He's very quick, and he's a very clever player. You know, the old saying of jack of all trades, master of none. He's jack of all trades and master of all of them. No, he's good at every style. Gary's a great player at every style.
Yeah, yeah. We talked earlier about that recording I heard of him doing a Hideaway, and it's so powerful. You know, it's just But
I think some of Gary's best playing is when he's just messing about.
Yeah.
You know, he tends to sometimes perfect things or over-perfect them a little bit in the studio.
Yeah.
But when he lets rip and he's not too worried about having it perfect, I think that's his best playing.
Yeah.
That's just me, but you know.
How many albums were you on with him? There's quite a few, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Victims of the Future was the first one. I did, I don't know, 3 or 4 tracks on that. And then Run for Cover, I think I only played on 1 track, and because I was doing other stuff, and then came in at the end of it, and then went on the road with him. And then there was Wild Frontier. Then there was After the War.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was Still Got the Blues for You, some tracks on that, and After Hours. So there's quite a few.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and one of my favourite albums that I played on with Gary was Power of the Blues. I played on all of that, and that was 2003 we recorded that. I went over there to do the album. Then 2004 we'd just started doing some shows, and he got a poisoned finger.
Oh.
And the gigs were pulled, and we didn't get a chance really to promote the album properly, so it kind of died a bit. But that's one of my favourite Gary Moore albums, Power of the Blues. It's because it wasn't too over-planned or anything. It was it had spontaneity. You know, it was get in the studio, oh, this is the song we're doing, let's have a run through, try this, try that, okay, let's record it, boom. At the end of 9 days we had all the backing tracks done.
Right.
So I remember Gary saying to me, he said, God, he said, the last album, he said, it took us 3 months to get to this stage.
Mm-hmm. Was there a lot of improvising in his shows?
No, I wouldn't say a lot of improvising. It was a similar sort of thing to, here's the boundaries.
Right.
You can do this and this and this here, and that might be a bit different each night. And some things would go on longer or a bit shorter or whatever, and it was always the nod and the wink.
Right. Okay. And I mean, a tune like Still Got the Blues, he'd have to do that note perfect, wouldn't it? Be,
Yeah,
so,
yeah. There was there was a song we used to do. It was an instrumental called "The Loner."
Oh yes.
And some nights, if he was into playing it, it would go on and on and on. The intro one night was about 4 minutes, and the whole thing ended up about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But it was, it was fun because it was always a little bit of a challenge as well, of what's going to happen next. But usually it was fairly disciplined.
Did you get to write with him at all?
No, not really. No, he's pretty self-sufficient.
Right.
Gary, with music and his lyrics and his song ideas. He's a good writer as well as a good player.
It occurs to me, like, it's still got the blues is the same chord progression as Autumn Leaves.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So I expect when I noticed that.
Well, there's a similarity between a few of those. There's the Loner, there's Parisian Walkway,
which is Blue Bossa.
Yeah.
I noticed that. So he must have a knowledge of the standards.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever get to play any standards with him?
Isn't there a Santana song called Europe or something?
Europa, yeah.
Europa, is it? That's okay.
Yeah.
And that's very similar to Parisian Walkways.
Yeah. I suppose grab the chord progression and do some stuff on top. Yeah. What was your highlight of playing with him?
Probably the. I'd always had a lot of respect for him as a player, and players like that for me sometimes had a little bit of. I felt a little bit intimidated, but getting into the camp and then being a part of it, that was a nice feeling, because I had a lot of respect for Gary and his playing. It was, I think he's up there with the best.
Mm-hmm. And you did get to play with a Beatle.
I did.
Yeah.
George Harrison, yeah. Because George was a mate of Gary's.
Okay.
And they both lived out at Henley.
Right.
Henley on Thames, outside of London, and Gary and George became very good mates.
Yeah.
George came to one of our shows one night and stood on my side of the stage for the whole gig. I think it was Ian Pace and John Lord from Deep Purple and George Harrison all standing together on my side of the stage, only about sort of, I don't know, 3 or 4 metres away. And I thought, oh, fucking hell. God, they're all standing there during the... But, after a while I just forgot about them, and it was and it went well. But George wrote a song for the blues album. I think it was called That Kind of Woman. And he played guitar on it, and he can really hear it's a George Harrison song.
Yeah.
And although we did our parts separately, it was nice to be on the track with a Beatle, with a song that George wrote for that album.